What is going on, everybody? Back here on 49ers First Takes YouTube channel with my two special guests, Sterling Bennett of 49er Access and Dre of Dre Area Sports, talking some 49ers off-season news as we are now into the combine and as we approach free agency and the draft. Guys, how is everybody doing today?
Doing fantastic. Got some Deebo Samuel news to get into today. It's a wonderful time to be a 49er fan. There's optimism in the air, and free agency's right around the corner.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I did a stream last night where we talked about free agency, and before we talk about anything, is the overall feeling, at least from some 49er fans, is free agency will be kind of boring. But as we all know, as 49er fans or NFL fans in general, anytime free agency starts, everybody's excited. And there's a lot of, fake stuff going on social media that we have to find a way to ignore and get past. So I'm looking forward to it. It's awesome to get the two of you on here, the three of us at the same time on the same day. Everybody's got, busy life schedules. But let's talk some 49er off-season news. And I guess the Deebo Samuel news is the topic of the hour now. There's some talk of him possibly getting a trade worked out to either the Commanders or the Houston Texans. I kind of just letting that thing kind of go right now. I don't have too much of an opinion on it other than from what John said at the combine is it's a mutual thing. They're going to respect his wishes and get him a fresh start. And I think from the 49ers perspective, at least monetarily wise, us as fans, the three of us kind of saw this coming last offseason. So either Sterling or Dre, if either of you want to go, what's your thoughts on the whole Deebo Samuel trade speculation?
Well, I mean, first of all, I'm doing really great. Thanks for asking. But what I wanted to say was that when it comes to Deebo Samuel, look, they're trying to respect, as John Lynch said, kind of respect his wishes and give him a fresh start. Okay, cool. Awesome. Love it. Right. So my whole thing was that, look, they're already going to take a hit. I want to say it's like 31 million in dead cap that they're going to take. Right now, if they wait until after June 1st, it does go down a little bit, but not a whole lot. And so it almost kind of feels like, okay, wait a minute. Hold on. You're going to just eat that money and hopefully get something in return, but nothing to compensate for that huge amount that they're giving up. And so my whole thing is that whatever team they're trading, that he's being traded to, I feel like they're going to get more than, let's say, a 5th or 6th round pick, because they're taking on, to give you the right to say, hey, look, we're going to trade Deebo to your team, right? I would imagine that team probably wants to work out an extension. Possibly, right? At the same time, it's kind of like, hey, look, if I'm going to trade him to you, I'm going to eat 31 million in dead cap. So in order to make this trade happen, I need to get something back in return that sort of makes up for that in its own way. And so I think, is he going to garner a 3rd round pick? Probably not. But I think that they may be getting something in return that's more than just a 5th or 6th round pick, and it could be multiple picks.
I am shocked that Deebo Samuel is garnering quote-unquote significant interest on the trade market whatsoever. For a player of his nature, nearing 29 years old, had a really crappy year in 2024, did show signs late against the Lions and the Dolphins, and may have made some team believe they can, rehash Deebo Samuel's 2021 again. I do agree with Dre that the Niners are certainly going to ask for maybe a 3rd round pick. They are going to want something big in return. I just do not buy into the fact any team out there, whether it is the Texans or the Commanders or the Steelers, even the Denver Broncos, are going to say, yeah, let's give you 2025 draft pick compensation anywhere near even a 5th round pick. I have a hard time believing teams around the NFL view a 29-year-old Deebo Samuel in the last year of his contract, where you're going to have to pay him some relatively big money, as a highly valuable asset to their offense. Now, the Texans aren't going to have Stephon Diggs. He's a free agent. Tank Dell's probably going to be out the majority of next season. So The need is certainly there. They don't have the money, though. They have around $4.5 million in cap space. So something's going to have to change in order for them to acquire Deebo Samuel. The Washington Commanders have plenty of money. They have the draft pick compensation, but they also have the need. But is Adam Peters really going to give the San Francisco 49ers what they want, knowing how John Lynch operates? I don't think so. I have a hard time buying into the fact the San Francisco 49ers get anything worth the value, at least in this year's draft, for Deebo Samuel.
A lot of me thinks that he's not going to get traded and that he's going to end up getting released before his roster option. So go ahead, Dre.
Well, and that very well might be the case, but the fact that he's actually garnering interest from other teams, we'd heard, the Texans and Commanders, right? The Commanders wanted Brandon Aiyuk last season. And then we're over here hearing talk about, teams are poking around at Brandon Aiyuk. I don't think the Niners would trade both receivers. At one point I did. I thought maybe they're just like, fuck it, let's go for it. But this is not Major League Baseball. Like in Major League Baseball, you could trade somebody and then the other team will absorb their entire contract because they're just like, yeah, we'll just take that on. You can't do that in the NFL. So if that were the case, it'd be a little different. So like if you're trading him and then you're freeing up all that cap space and just like a boatload of money, then that's a whole different story. Then it's like, oh my God, please make it happen. Go sign T. Higgins, But they definitely want to get something done. I know that, yes, they'll save some money if they just outright release him, but they want something in return. And to me, something's better than nothing. I think an example of this is kind of like, you remember when like Terrell Owens was supposed to, he was going to leave the Niners and go sign with the Eagles, but because his agent filed the paperwork too late, they couldn't do the trade or something like that. And so they, he couldn't sign with them.
He was going to go to the Ravens. They didn't get the paperwork in. Then he went to Philadelphia afterwards for like a 6th-round pick. It was incredibly how bad their agent ruined that.
It was a 6th-round pick and Brandon Whiting was a defensive lineman. I was like, okay, cool, we got something. We got. But at the end of the day,
rounder.
But at the end of the day, they got something for what should have been nothing, right? And so I think they're trying to take that same approach is that, and you look at it, right? So they take a big dead cap hit this season, and I think they take another one, maybe not as big next season, and then he's off the books, right? So, John Lynch is talking about how they want to get their cap under control, but it's weird to think that like, okay, well, we want to get it under control, but we're willing to trade him and take on a huge hit and get it over with. And then free up that cash, more cash next year and even more the year after. But it's a really weird situation because either way, they're going to take a hit money-wise.
But if he's damaged goods in my eyes, and so I just like Sterling says, a 6th to 7th round pick seems like the only viable tradable asset.
Am I blind here? Like, did I not watch all the games last season and watch Deebo Samuel underperform badly, and then not to hear, and then only hear Tim Kawakami say that that his sources were telling him that he was 20 pounds overweight at multiple times during the season. We saw how bad he was last season. Why is it that these other teams are like, hey, look, I'll give you this for him? Is the fact that they think, hey, look, you put him behind our offensive line or you put him in our offensive system and we could get him back to where he used to be at? Is that what they're thinking? Because I don't see it happening, but, I guess I could be wrong.
Hey, if a team's willing to take that risk and give up any sort of, reasonable draft picks, that's on them. I'm not. If I'm the 49ers, I'm like, yeah, absolutely, take them. Hey, just look at the D4 trade a couple years ago, where like the 49ers got completely fleeced. He was a walking bag of freaking bones, just injuries upon injuries. And hey, the Niners were stupid enough to think that they could get something out of him and made that trade. So if somebody thinks that they can have him come into their program and still find ways to get something out of him, then that's on them. You have to be realistic of what you're getting. And he's not a wide receiver. He's a jacked up Percy Harvin on the wrong, almost 30 years old. So hey, if someone's willing to make that trade and take on that money or not take on that money, but take on that responsibility of trying to figure out a way to incorporate him into their offense or whatever, so be it. I just personally think, I don't know. I think releasing him might end up being the most viable option. But hey, if someone's willing to make the trade and be stupid, then go for it.
Yeah, because I mean, there's no way that they're going to trade him for Jonathan Allen. I've heard that too. Like, oh, maybe they'll package him with another pick and get Jonathan Allen. Jonathan Allen's base salary for next season is like just over $15 million. If you brought in
guarantees, though, they could extend him and reduce that cap hit entirely, almost.
Well, they can, and that's the thing is that do they want? Is that something that they want?
It's
far-fetched. It's a lot of work involved. Okay, so let's bring him in here. Then we have to restructure and do all this stuff. That's why I was asking Sterling earlier, like, hey, is it even possible for them to restructure Deebo's contract and kind of do like a sign and trade? I know they do in the NBA all the time. A sign and trade where, because the team's going to want him. I mean, yes, he'd be cheap this season for the other team, but now you got to worry about trying to re-sign this guy. If there's a team out there that feels like, hey, this is a guy that we feel has more years left in him, maybe they want to get an extension done with him before they get the trade. I mean, it's wishful thinking, really, but I mean, anything's possible, I guess.
I would not focus too much on the cap ramifications for San Francisco. I think a lot of the reason they don't want Deebo on the roster, yes, downward play last year, didn't play great. I also think that a lot of this is coming from up above John Lynch of like, look, we don't mind keeping Deebo if he's motivated and he's locked in. Obviously, neither one of those things are happening. He wants out. I think Jed York is like, I don't want to pay a guy $15 million this year if I don't have to due to that roster bonus. I think a lot of this is not really cap. It's a lot of guarantees and bonuses that they don't want to have on the books. I think if I'm correct here, and I might be wrong, so forgive me, I think if San Francisco trades or releases Deebo Samuel pre-March 22nd, when his bonus is due, I think that cap hits that dead money hits the books this year and doesn't go to next year. So I think the idea is they already have some kind of cap limitations next year. They want to carry over as much as they can from this year 2000 to 2026. So they're trying to save money where they can, and they think Deebo Samuel, getting him off the team now for a variety of reasons, is beneficial, team-wise, attitude-wise, and also just financially. It makes the most sense. And I think any team getting him, when they look at acquiring Deebo Samuel, I don't think other teams view the money as that big of a deal either. I think they see it as, we're going to have to likely extend this guy. But I will say this. There is a very real possibility. The reason why you hear teams like the Commanders and the Texans, and to a lesser extent, the Broncos and the Steelers, is because the Niners gave Deebo Samuel the option to find trade partners. Well, he found two of them, the Texans and the Commanders. This was his doing. These are two teams he found that want to trade for him. I think that's a really good sign for people like myself who don't think or didn't think a trade was possible. I think even more so than ever now, a trade is likely on the table. It just depends on what that draft pick compensation looks like for San Francisco, because they can still say no if the Commanders give them a 7th round pick. But I am of the boat now where it's like, hey, Deebo found himself and honestly helped San Francisco in the process finding a trade partner with the Commanders and the Texans.
I guess it comes down to, what do you guys think is the deadline for this move? Are we going for pre-free agency, or do they lock into some parameters with somebody right now and then just announce it in 2 weeks? Like, how bad do the Niners want him off the team?
Did you see the Matthew Berry report earlier today? Or
I did not.
Kind of a report. Okay, so Matthew Berry works for NBC Sports now, is like their fantasy football guru they have there. Used to work for ESPN. He reported or said on Twitter today that he was building his like late night rumor column you heard at the Combine. And he was saying it may be dated by next week, but Deebo Samuel is probably going to get traded. And the Commanders are one of the main teams. So when you're looking at a timeline, it seems to be that the Niners and whoever else they trade with, Commanders, Texans, Broncos, and Steelers, that San Francisco is motivating and pushing this thing to get done as early as next week to avoid the entirety of free agency get it way ahead of the bonus hits, and almost, not to say, get rid of that pesky gnat out of the room really fast, but I think it helps them get rid of the baggage, if you will, and just focus on their own guys who want to be there in 2025.
Yeah, because he doesn't want to be there. I mean, the fact of the matter is he doesn't want to be on this team anymore. So they're highly motivated to get him off of this team and then focus on the players that want to be there. And if he gives them an advantage in terms of something in return, may it be a draft pick, then that's a bonus. Otherwise, you're just going to lose him. So it's kind of like, we can look at the cap space all we want and debate on, what's better or what's worse. But it feels like they're looking at it like, hey, if we get something for him, that's a bonus than him just getting cut and leaving. Now, whatever trade they make, go ahead.
So I wanted to take a look at this comment from Kawachito. He said they have cap space this year and they don't want to pay this option bonus. If you can get a fifth, just take the hit up front and backload Purdy's deal. I mean, they got more cap this year, so I would assume that they would want to make that move and eat it if they could this year. What do you make of that? That they, quarterback deals, especially big quarterback deals, always seem to be real light in the first couple of years, anyways, right? And then the end years are where it really starts to pick up steam. So yeah, that sounds like if they could get a fifth rounder for him, if they could move him for a fifth rounder, I would do it because I mean, hey, the Niners have made their bed with their players in the fifth round with some players, fifth, sixth, even seventh. So I'm down for it. It's just a matter of the 49ers are willing to make that move.
Do you guys think that, while I would agree with Kawachito, yes, backloading Purdy's deal will definitely make your life easier. You can pay George Kittle, you can pay Fred Warner. If you want to bring back Greenlaw, you can. The next couple years, maybe you can go sign somebody else because this team doesn't have much cap space the next few years after 2025. So I think it's important that, yes, anything you get for Deebo Samuel in regards to a trade is a plus. I don't care if it's a 7th round pick, but I'm not sure if you guys saw today, and I want to pass this by you. ESPN's Benjamin Solak, who I know sometimes gets crap for his tape reviews and whatnot on Twitter and X, but he put out a article today that had like the perfect dream scenario for the San Francisco 49ers trying to trade Deebo Samuel. And he said that the San Francisco 49ers probably won't get much for the 2025 draft class if they were to get picks back this year. But he said, if the San Francisco 49ers were willing to look ahead in 2026 and 2027, maybe there's more room to maybe garner a 4th or a 5th round pick for Deebo rather than, say, a 7th rounder or a 6th rounder this year. Do you think San Francisco would be open to trading Deebo for draft pick compensation in 1 and 2 years and saying, look, we don't really need the instant gratification of trading Deebo Samuel away. We'll save the money and we'll get picks in 2 years' time and call it a deal?
I can see that. I mean, they have 10 picks. They have 10 picks this year. So it's not like they're at a loss for draft picks going into the draft this year. So I could see a future. I could definitely see a future pick for Deebo. That would be awesome. Just based on what John Lynch said and Dre kind of touched on it about cap constraints, the 49ers are having they're reaching that part of with the Purdy deal coming up where they're going to have cap constraints. So the draft and draft picks, especially if, like you said, the team they want to get younger, are going to be so important now because of the lack of funds. They won't be dabbling in free agency like they've been the last couple of years with a quarterback on the cheap deal. So, if they can get something for him and just add on to the picks we're going to have next year in the 2026 draft, I would be all for it.
Yeah, I mean, they're at a point now where it's like, look, I think they're looking at the formula that the Philadelphia Eagles used to get to the Super Bowl and win. They saw how the Eagles were drafting and how they pretty much bolstered their defensive offensive line through the draft. And I think that's something that they want to do. They started last season and they want to continue to do so into this season. And I think that they're going to be trying even harder to make sure that they capitalize on all their draft picks in this coming draft. I mean, you look at last year's draft. I mean, they hit on pretty much all their picks except for Jared Kingston, who they ended up releasing. So They're hoping to do the same kind of thing again this next draft. And I think they saw what teams like the Eagles did in order to kind of rebuild their team. And they've even seen what the Rams have done in rebuilding their own offense or defensive line, especially with a guy like Jared Verse. So I think that, look, I mean, like, I would love for them to make a move and get a guy like, Myles Garrett or whatnot, but I don't think they're in the position or in the market to make a trade like that because they haven't set themselves up to make that big move. We're hearing all this talk about the Philadelphia Eagles are supposedly they want to go all in getting Myles Garrett. It's because they've hit on the draft for a number of years. So they have the depth already drafted into their roster. So they can make that big move now, that big leap, and try and get like a Myles Garrett and have that, that big premier pass rusher. The Niners, they got Nick Bosa. And when they went out and got Javon Hargrave, that was their version of, we're going to go all in and get Javon Hargrave and make that big splash. Now, was he as good as we want him to be? No, but we did get to the Super Bowl. So I think that's where we're hearing these rumors about the Eagles going all in on Myles Garrett. But the Niners need to invest in the draft. Earlier this offseason, I was all for, like, dude, go for Myles Garrett, go for Maxx Crosby. I want the sexy pick. But at this point, they really need to stay firm on focusing on the draft and deepening their team through the draft. Like, there's been rumors about Greenlaw possibly coming back, which is something that I talked about with you guys long-ass time ago when I said, hey, because of Solid, he might come back. I could see them doing that, but at this point... You
were wrong then and you're wrong now.
Well, but here's the thing. If they draft right, they won't have to.
Right.
If they take a defensive lineman and then a receiver and then a running back and then a tight end, like, there's a lot of needs this team has. I mean, we're talking about Deebo Samuel being traded, right? We're not going to have Brandon Aiyuk till like week 8, week 9. Who knows? There's some talk that he'll be back by week 1. I highly doubt that. But regardless, he's going to miss time. And so now you're talking about a team that's going to go into the 2025 season with Cowing, Pearsall, and Juwan Jennings. You're not going to have Deebo Samuel. He's going to be gone in a matter of days based on what everyone's talking about. And you're not going to have Brandon Aiyuk because he's hurt. So where does that leave you receiver-wise? Well, this draft is not a very deep receiver draft. So there are some guys that are good out there. But are they guys that you want to take chances on in the second, third, and so on? So in the receiver position, they're in a really bad spot. Now you could argue, they have George Kittle, they have Christian McCaffrey. Those guys are badass. Yes, but the receiving core, they are, but the receiving core is extremely shallow, and that has me very, very concerned.
Yeah, we could definitely touch on that in a bit. Kind of recircle back to if we think something might happen. As much as I don't think they'll be a big player in free agency, I almost think that they might have to be, as far as maybe if you're not going to get a T. Higgins, maybe you go for a lesser known, like a Devontae Adams on a 1-year deal, a rental type player, something along those. T. Higgins is not in the realm of possibilities. 49er fans who play Madden, if you want to go turn off the salary cap and do all that sort of thing, then
that makes the game not fun though. Then you're just I gotta think about this. I mean, look, when you go when you go to over the cap, they right off the top they got 5 positions with top contracts, right? You're talking about quarterback, wide receiver, offensive line, edge rusher, and defensive back. The Niners have a player in that category. Especially after this offseason with Brock Purdy, they're going to have one at quarterback. They're going to have one at receiver with Brandon Aiyuk getting paid $30 million a season to sit with a busted leg. At the old line, they have Trent Williams, and at the edge rusher, they have Nick Bosa. The only thing they don't have is an expensive defensive back. So they're paying a ton of money to these guys.
Yeah. What I wanted to kind of transition a little bit into the Purdy negotiations. John Lynch talked about it at the draft. It's kind of weird. I got such a weird vibe listening to that press conference yesterday.
Oh, I loved it. It was awesome.
I came away feeling depressed.
Really?
Oh, yeah, because he was like, we're starting negotiations. We're not going to, talk about it too much because that's just the way we do things. but there is no guarantee that we come to a deal with Brock Purdy. And I was just like, what? Like, that has to happen. You don't have any other choice. There was a report out there, and I'm going to go to Sterling to this one because I know Sterling knows things that I do not, where it said that he would be willing to take a team-friendly deal in order to be the quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers. And I see you shaking your head.
What does that mean? Like,
I don't.
What is a team-friendly deal?
That would be
$5 million.
I would love to know. Well, I would love to know what exactly that means. Yeah, that's why Twitter, man, you got to pay attention to who these people are and who's putting out these reports. But yeah, team-friendly. What is that? What does that look like?
There was a report by Diana Arcidi on the Scoop City podcast where she was talking with Chase Daniel, and they were discussing timelines for Purdy, and they all kind of had the same idea of they want to get things done relatively quickly here. Brock Purdy's agent is at the combine, and John Lynch said himself to Matt Mayoko that they're going to have a meeting. Now, how far does that get? I have no idea. Maybe that's simply just a handshake and we'll get this done later. I have no idea what that meeting will entail. Maybe there actually is some money, tossed around and some price tags kind of discussed. But one, I think Purdy and the Niners want to get something done. They've been both very clear that they want to get it done soon. They want to avoid drama. Rossini talked about a timeline being at the latest, maybe late April. So pre-draft probably is a good time. I would say maybe it leaks into May during the OTA period where Brock really doesn't need to be there. But Brock, he'll be around the facility. He'll be there in the summertime. He wants to be there. He saw what happened last year when Aiyuk and wasn't there and Trent wasn't there. Like, he saw what happens when your star players aren't involved. And as a quarterback, he has to know how important timing is with his receivers and running backs. That said, the idea of a team-friendly deal, while is great in theory, you have to really pay attention to who's talking sometimes. And I don't know who said the report. Maybe they're an insider, maybe it was Schefter for all I know. But Rossini, who sometimes gets things wrong. I know the Jets fans certainly hate her right now for what she did to them. But she was talking about $57.5 million per year. They'd be just behind Dak Prescott, and that would surpass Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence's for that. That would make Brock the second highest paid quarterback in NFL history per year. Look, obviously guarantees matter more than anything. My bigger concern with Brock's contract isn't that it'll get done, isn't what the per average annual value is. It's more about how long will it be? Is it a 3-year deal? Is it a 4-year deal? Is it a 5-year deal? I know John and Kyle keep tossing out the same phrase over and over again. We want Brock to be here as long as we are. What does that mean? Like, do they have plans to leave? Do they have Brock being here for 25 plus years? He can't play that long. So what does that mean? I think Brock is going to sign for about $57 million per year. They'll get it done probably after the NFL draft. And that they'll be that. Like, the Brock Purdy's contract is almost the least of my worries this year for the 49ers.
I am somewhat concerned based on how things went last year. I think like the 49ers as an organization, after how bad things were last offseason going into the season, when I hear that kind of talk coming from John Lynch off the podium, it was a little off-putting, just considering everything that went down last year and how it didn't seem like there was a sense of urgency to get anything done in the offseason last year, and how things leaked into almost into the regular season. And of course, Trent gets hurt. Trent, he's an incredible player when he's on the field, but he does have an injury history. And of course, he ends up missing the majority of the end of the year. And then we have the Brandon Aiyuk fluke knee injury that happened. So, man, I would love to see them get on top of this. I have a feeling, though, you might be right. I could see a post NFL draft early May deal, which would be great, because then it's like way ahead of training camp and we don't have to talk about it. But I just think if I'm Brock Purdy's agent, especially of what ended up happening at the end of the season with him hurting his elbow or having that nerve situation, I'm not stepping on the field without a new deal, and not even close. So, man, $57 million for Brock Purdy. If we think that the Niner talk, QB talk, from wherever it's coming from, whether it's within our own YouTube circle with people who do not like Brock, people who do not like Kyle, if you thought the talk about all that last year was hot and heavy. Just wait until Brock Purdy gets signed. It's going to be a whole new level. It's going to be a different type of level, though, because now the money's on the books and the 49ers have to pay him. So be ready.
Well, I mean, they still have an option. If they don't get a deal done, he still could play on his fourth year. I think they're going to get a deal done regardless, because I think this is something that they want to start budgeting for and have a structure for this. There's the fourth year option, and then also there's a franchise tag. To me, that is a reality if everything falls apart. Like, you just can't come to an agreement on a contract, and that's kind of worst case scenario. But I still think it's going to get done. They've expressed, that they want to get it done. And yeah, it is a little weird when they go, we want him to be here as long as we're here. So I think what they're saying is that essentially their success is tied to his success. If he's going to be here, he has to succeed. If he fails, they're probably gone. And they recognize that. But at this point, what other choice do they have? They don't have a choice. They went all in on Trey Lance, and that has really devastated them in terms of like their draft. They're badly, under-resourced because they gave up so many draft picks to get Trey Lance, and then they kind of stumbled upon Brock Purdy. Oh, wait, good thing we drafted him. My God. But Matthew Stafford, agreed to a contract today, or they reached agreement with Stafford today. And I think that Stafford probably represents the high end of the quarterback contracts for this next offseason, or this offseason. And so I know he originally wanted like $100 million, like $50 million a year. So if he's getting the $50 million per season for the next 2 years, then that kind of shows you where Brock, his contract negotiations are going to start at. I still think he's going to get more than that. I think he's going to get somewhere around, if not 50, he's going to get like 55. But I think one of these quarterbacks had to come to an agreement before they were going to finalize Brock Purdy's. And now that Stafford has agreed to come back to the Rams, I think that this is the first step in trying to solidify where and how much you're going to spend on Brock Purdy.
I feel like, and I said this yesterday when I was streaming with Al of 49ers Plus podcast, last year I fought against the ridiculous stuff from fans talking about, Kyle needs to go, John needs to go, Brock Purdy's a bum, the 40, anybody who has any type of stroke, who's a content creator, we're pushing that narrative. And I fought against it as a fan, and I think a lot of us did. But the clock starts when Brock gets this new deal. The clock starts on the 49ers, John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, to get this thing either close to a championship or winning a championship. And all the heat that we got last year, or at least we heard last year from different people, whoever they may be, whether famous or not famous, if this season was to turn into an unmitigated disaster like last season, then all those things that we talked about, all those things that we deflected, all become real issues. So a great sign would be to get him signed, hot and paid for, ready for training camp, to start this year out going in the right direction, as we try to embark on getting that 6th Lombardi that is just so far we've been, we just have not been able to get. So I think the clock starts officially for John and Kyle, and the saying that, they're, in kind of in lockstep, and that he's going to be here as long as they're here. I think, like you said, they're tied together. And if they fail and he fails, then they might all be gone at some point.
Well,
we'll see though.
If they don't make the playoffs this next season, then I think it's going to be pretty bad. Like, the term heads are going to roll in terms of, like, there's going to be consequences to some level. Does that mean they're going to get rid of both Kyle and John? I don't know. I can't tell you yes or no, but something's going to happen. Some change is going to happen. But I think that this team's in a position where they at least should be able to make the playoffs. I mean, they have a 4th seeded schedule. If you look at their schedule, it looks really easy, based on how these teams performed this past season. So I think that they're definitely in the driver's seat to win the division, but it's a matter of can they fill these holes that they have all over their team. It just shows you how important it is when you get to the Super Bowl to win the Super Bowl, because you don't always get that chance where everything just aligns just right and your team is healthy at the right times. So they really got to take advantage of that. And right now they have a lot of holes to fill, and it's just the draft is the first step in doing that. And obviously March 12th, the beginning of the new NFL season, that's going to be a big day to see what they actually do and who they actually sign.
Yeah. So the Niners, the way they've talked so far this offseason is vastly different than how they talked in 2021. 2020 was a disaster, injuries everywhere. They go and get Trey Lance, and the thought was we can still be all in on this team. And they were. They went out and they made some moves. They brought in Nebuchadnezzar, and they went and got Arden Key. They traded for Charles Omenihu. Like, they were aggressive to make that team better. When you listen to how John Lynch has talked, the one time he has talked this offseason at the Combine, very, very direct words that you rarely ever hear from teams willing to go all in, or at least that consider themselves Super Bowl contenders. He used the word, recalibrate, retool. Like, when I hear that, that doesn't scream all in. That immediately takes players like Myles Garrett. And despite what Kawakami reports, which I have met Tim multiple times, he's a very, I wouldn't say kind man, he's very standoffish, but very good reporter at what he does. And he's super tuned in, but he's talking about them being a top destination for an edge rusher, maybe.
Yeah.
They're not going to trade for Maxx Crosby. They're not going to trade for Myles Garrett. They're maybe could trade for Trey Hendrickson, but an extension's due, and doesn't seem likely either. You listen to how they talk, and Dre, you mentioned the Rams earlier. You go back to the Rams 2023 draft class. They got Puka Nacua. They went and got Kobe Turner. And then 2024, we know Jared Verse and Braden Fisk. Like, the Rams realized, hey, we have an older roster that, we won a championship, and but we weren't great in 2022, and we got to refine ourselves. And you can tell the Niners, I think, they are willing to give Lynch and Shanahan probably 2 to 3 more years and see if they can get it done and see where they're going. Because when you use terms like recalibrate and retool and almost not rebuild, but like restock, that to me screams 10 draft picks. We're probably going to do everything we can to make all 10 of those. We're going to trade Deebo. There's rumors of maybe Kyle Juszczyk is done in San Francisco too. Like, you hear these talks of older players with high cap hits. They can save some money on the back end of those deals, and they can, kind of infuse this roster like last year with some young, talented players. That to me is exciting, not depressing though. That's like, heck yes, we're getting younger, maybe faster, maybe stronger. And if everything goes as planned, which it may or may not, a more successful team in a longer stretch run to get a championship when it's all said and done.
Well, I think one of the problems that people have is that they want to win now. They want to win the Super Bowl next season. And I think the Niners are looking at it like, hey, look, do we want to do that? Yes, we do. However, at what cost do you say, no, we have to win it this season because it's in our stadium, it's in Santa Clara, we have to win it. But, I mean, at what cost, though? I mean, you're not really in a position where you're already stocked with a ton of talent that's already under contract. They got a lot of holes. Do you bring back Drew Greenlaw, or do you draft a linebacker, or do you sign a linebacker like a Nick Bolton to replace him? Or what's the guy, Zach Bond? So they have a lot of decisions to make. But I think for fans want to see the team win now. If you aren't focusing on, okay, they have to be in the Super Bowl next season, right? If you're just focusing on where the team is at and what the prospect is for the future of the franchise, I think we're in a good position, especially with all these draft picks coming up. So we're in a position to really retool and rebuild this team, in a sense, to become a contender for the next few years. And I think that's kind of where they're at. But a lot of the fans are saying, well, we want to win a Super Bowl. Well, it's hard to do that. And you don't do it every season. The Chiefs went on a crazy run where they won 3. But at the same time, this is the Niners, so we know that they have the spending ability. They've done it before. It doesn't feel like, okay, like if the San Francisco Giants came out and said, we're going to retool, we're going to, get the salary cap under control, you'd be like,
we're doing that for 5 years and
boy.
it didn't work once.
Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like when you hear the Giants say it, you're like, oh, here we go again. Damn it.
There's also no salary cap in baseball, mind
There
you.
isn't.
There is
There
one
isn't.
in the NFL.
But what I'm saying is that, like, if you hear the Giants say things that John Lynch was saying, you get really worried. I'm like, oh God, that means it's not going to get anybody. This is going to suck. But I think with the Niners, I still think that they're going to make acquisitions when free agency opens up. I would love for them to get Drew Dahlman. I don't think they will. I think he's probably a little too expensive for what they can afford right now. And then they brought in that guy. What's his name? Hennessy.
Yep.
I was going to call him Brad Hennessy, but that's a pitcher for the Giants from back in the day.
Yeah,
But anyway, he could be a center.
Trey in there too if you want to.
Yeah, Jesse Foppert. But the thing is that the center position is something that they need to improve on because it's really bad. I don't think Jake Brendle's the answer. So maybe Hennessy could fill in there. They have a lot of question marks everywhere where it's kind of like, will this work? Oh, maybe it will. But if you're going to spend money anywhere and it's not going to be on the offensive line, then I think the biggest need that they have would be at wide receiver. Not having Aiyuk for half the season and not having Deebo Samuel, and you have to retool that position. I don't think you can draft and say, okay, we fixed our receiving core. I think they need to bring somebody in here to bolster up their receiving core. And so that way you have, an X receiver, and then Brandon Aiyuk comes back, and hopefully he can be, the Brandon Aiyuk of, 2 years ago.
Sterling made a really good point that
No, he didn't.
Essentially with the 49ers, essentially when you talk about retooling and recalibrating, the Rams did that, but they won a Super Bowl. They went all in and they paid the price. They had an under-talented roster. They had not had a lot of draft picks over a certain amount of time. And then all of a sudden they are forced to be like everybody else and go and draft players and develop them. And they've been able to do that. 49ers had the same kind of situation, but they don't have that cachet of winning a championship. So going into 2025, this to me, and a lot of people might not like to hear this, but it does feel like a retooling, kind of a rebuilding type year where they might not make the Super Bowl. And, making the playoffs, yeah, probably a fourth place schedule, but I just don't think the 49ers depth-wise across the board on the team are good enough. And it's going to take a Herculean effort in the draft, 10 picks. Sterling's right. We got to hit on all 10 picks. They can't give anything away. Where you are in the draft, pick every time it comes up. No trading, no screwing around, no nothing. Make a pick, build the depth on this team. They need depth everywhere.
You need to take the most talented player available. You need to draft those players as they come across your draft board. But I mean, there are needs. But I mean, like, I'm just saying, like, a lot of these teams, like the Eagles, have drafted players, or the Lions. They drafted the best player that was available, and you could say, well, you didn't really need that, but you know what? We'll find a spot for them because we just need to enrich our roster with just talent. I was even shocked they drafted Isaac Guerrendo last season. I was like, what?
Not a bit, man. That was Shanahan written all over.
But at the same time, I was like, we're really gonna do this? Like, okay, like okay, and
which thank God they did, mind you.
Well, exactly. Imagine they didn't do that. Like, he ended up being a running back for a while, then he got hurt, like everybody else. But still,
everybody got hurt last year. Let's touch on some other. We could kind of do a rapid fire here. Some other topics. Ben Bartch was re-signed. I know some of us last year would have loved to have seen him play towards the end of the season. That did not happen. So Ben Bartch is re-signed. Left guard, it seems to me and to everyone else who has a brain that Aaron Banks' time with the 49ers is probably over. Yeah. And Spencer Burford and Ben Bartch look like the two people competing, maybe a draft pick. I don't know where Nick Sakiel fits. I don't know if Nick Sakiel is more prone to play center. I'm not exactly sure. I don't pay attention to offensive linemen all the time. So that to me was an underrated signing that I was happy about. I don't know if you guys felt the same way.
Yeah, I think you're looking at your starting left guard next year. I think he played well enough in a very short sample size to warrant at least a shot to start at left guard next year for San Francisco. I'm sure it'll be Ben Barch and probably Nick Zakelj and Spencer Burford trying to vie for that left guard position. I know when you hear the name Ben Barch, you don't think of a highly touted prospect. He was a former 4th-round draft pick in 2020, so it's not like he was a UDFA or a 7th rounder. He's a mid-round pick that on any other team would probably be starting somewhere on their team, but the Jacksonville Jaguars are a mess. I think that may have been the Urban Meyer year where he was the head coach, which, my God, what a disaster. But he played 65 total snaps last year, got a big start against the Bills and did really good in the snow. Last year, per PFF, a 74 pass blocking grade. He had 2 games over 78. Run blocking was a little worse, but overall 71.2. Like, there's a lot to like from Ben Barch. I think maybe not like we're comfortable with him being the starter, or at least, Ben Barch is the guy. You at least walk into training camp and OTA saying he really intrigues us. And if he doesn't do well, I think this team really likes Spencer Burford playing at the left side as well. He was openly talking about not really wanting to be a right guard anymore and being more comfortable on the left side. And I think that's where he'll be the remainder of his career. And when Barch got hurt, Burford also looked pretty competent. So
he did.
Again, it was like 1 or 2 games. So I think you could see a pair of 4th-round picks duke it out for that left guard next year, with Nick Zakelj maybe being the center, albeit I think Shanahan likes Ben Barch or likes Jake Brendel a little too much for our own liking.
I feel like that next year's offensive line, other than Ben Barch, is going to look painfully the same. So a lot of people who are thinking that the Niners are going to go into the draft and draft an offensive tackle in the top 11 pick, I don't think
Give me Marcus Mbao from Purdue in the 3rd round. It's the perfect fit. Do it, Kyle.
They have to draft at least one offensive lineman.
We say that every year, though, and they never do.
They got Dominic Pooney. I mean, he was good.
Right, but I'm saying, like, a lot of us, even though it's not a sexy draft pick, offensive line, like if you pick an offensive lineman at 11, not a lot of 49er fans are going to be like, yeah, right? Edge rusher, yes. Top flight receiver.
I think we will. We'll be like, yeah. Here's the thing. I just don't want Jake Brendel back out there again. I mean,
don't
he was
want him
a
either.
Constant problem.
He's horrible.
He was horrible. I mean, yeah. So,
another bit of news, CMC. It's funny. His father went out and said around the Super Bowl, that he was healthy and he's ready to go, which I thought it was kind of a weird statement. Like, the season's over. What do you mean ready to go? I don't know. Maybe a couple too many concussions.
Coach, put him in.
Ed McCaffrey. And then John Lynch was like, yeah, he looks good. He should be available for some of the off-season workouts, which was like, okay. I don't know if that's more of them holding him back, because we all know Christian McCaffrey is a maniac when it comes to training and getting ready for the season. Anybody surprised? You guys surprised with that, or is that sound par for the course?
I think it's pretty par for the course. I don't think, yes, there's worries about Christian McCaffrey, and I think the more interesting topic really is what they're going to do with Jordan Mason. There's rumors they want to bring him back and then not bring him back, and it's just more of a how much they want to spend on a tender for him. I don't think I would pay it, but with the concerns of CMC's longevity, I can see them maybe feeling more comfortable 2nd-round tender, 3rd-round tender with Mason. But I think a lot of what John Lynch was saying was that we got to save CMC from himself. We cannot have this player that has the 2nd most touches of anybody behind Derrick Henry since 2022. Now, we all love CMC, Offensive Player of the Year a couple years ago. Like, when he's healthy, he is a dynamic player. I also think that with Deebo Samuel leaving, there is room for Christian McCaffrey to assume his role on end arounds and screen passes and dump offs. Like, there's a lot of ways they can save CMC. Even last year, a lot of the conversation was, how can we alleviate Christian McCaffrey's runs up the middle, outside the tackles, and get him away from constant pressure on his calf and his knee. And I think San Francisco, mainly Kyle Shanahan, has to have a concentrated effort to make that possible, because without Christian McCaffrey, you like Jordan Mason, but this offense becomes so much less dynamic that it can almost damn your season to third place again if you're not careful.
Well, it's tough because, I mean, like, you look at all the other teams and they have that kind of thunder and lightning approach. Look at the Lions, Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, right? So you ask yourself, well, why don't we do that? Why don't we have Mason and McCaffrey, thunder and lightning, right? But it always ends up being McCaffrey. He's just always on the field. And then, then you don't even see Mason. You're like, well, why do you even have him? He's just sitting on the sideline, not doing anything. So it's how you use these players. I would love for them to be able to interchange the two of them, use McCaffrey more as a wideout at times. But like, Kyle loves having him back there. He loves having him as that option, as that distraction on the field. Because, I mean, teams have to account for where McCaffrey's at all times.
Kyle kind of put that on Bobby Turner. Bobby Turner's the one who doesn't like taking people out of games.
Yeah.
So if you want to blame anybody for what happened to Christian McCaffrey, Bobby Turner.
Yeah. Blame the 75-year-old man on the sidelines.
Yeah, there you go.
He doesn't believe in running back by committee. He believes in, if you're good, stay out there. Emmitt Smith, Barry Sanders. Who else touched the ball? Yeah. Who else touched the ball when those guys played? Nobody. So
LaDainian Tomlinson is constantly giving them the ball.
Right. They have to protect themselves. They have to protect Christian McCaffrey from himself. We say that now, but then we're coming back, and then we're all talking in October of this coming year, and Christian McCaffrey's looking like the old Christian McCaffrey. And
I think he's going to have a good year.
Jordan Mason's not getting any touches. So
yeah. If McCaffrey's having a really, really good year, then I would think Mason is not going to get very many touches. And we know that McCaffrey doesn't like to come out of the game. He wants to be in the game at all times. He's just a gamer like that. So it's sort of, it is what it is. I would love for them to bring Mason back, because I think he showed a lot of potential in what he can do as a running back, even as a starter. So he gives you that flexibility that if McCaffrey has some injuries, hey, we're going to sit you, or we're going to limit your carries, and we're going to give more to Mason. And I think last season proved that, like, this guy has a lot more talent than people knew about when it comes to Jordan Mason. So I hope they bring him back. I don't think they're going to bring back Elijah Mitchell. That's like putting on, used tires. Like, okay, we've done this already. When you look at when you look at the running back room, I mean, you're talking about McCaffrey, Mason, Guerendo. And so they're probably going to draft somebody as well. Kyle drafts a running back in almost every single draft. So I would imagine they're probably going to draft one this season as well, or this draft as well. And who's that going to be? I don't know, but where do you work that person in? I mean, is he going to be your fourth string running back immediately? I don't know. Does Guerendo take a different role this season instead of being a running back? I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, he damn near saved us at one point.
It would be very frustrating for this team to, one, bring Christian McCaffrey back, which is great, and then give a tender, whether it's second or third round, to Jordan Mason, which is around $4 to $6 million of a 1-year cap hit. So you're like, okay, we're paying a backup running back pretty good money. Then you're also paying Guerendo second year of his contract for fourth round pick last year. Then if you draft somebody else, let's say it's the fourth or fifth round, if it's Kyle Shanahan, might be a third round. Like, you have a lot of talent there, but we've also seen Kyle Shanahan, Bobby Turner say, yeah, if one guy's working, nobody else is getting the football. It would piss me off to pay Jordan Mason, have Guerendo, draft a running back, and just throw CMC out there for 25 carries a game. And we're like, okay, like, CMC's great. The odds he bounces back to his offensive player of the year ways are slim, but he can still be a really good running back for you. But it would piss me off if you're going to waste the money to pay Mason and waste the draft pick on a running back and never play him. No, you have to have somewhat of a rotation. I would like to see, and maybe it's not the best example, pre-Christian McCaffrey. the Niners utilized Raheem Mostert, Matt Breida, Tevin Coleman. All three of those guys got snaps during the year. Now, there's a lot of reasons as to why that happened. Raheem came on late, Breida had a fumbling problem, and Coleman was the veteran that was going to start. And all those guys had their flashes, all those guys had their downfalls, but and even Jeff Wilson Jr. got reps. Why can't we utilize 4 running backs? Not because of injuries, because all 4 of those guys can give you something else that you need through a 17-game season, which is grueling for everybody, especially running backs.
Yeah. Agreed.
It's like why don't we see formations where you have both Mason and McCaffrey in the backfield, and then McCaffrey splits out as a receiver, and then it's like, or he motions out as a receiver, and then the defense has to account for him. We never really saw that. We never saw them together on the field at all. It was always one or the other, and mainly just McCaffrey when McCaffrey was healthy. And so I agree. If they bring back Mason, we're still going to see a heavy dose of Christian McCaffrey, regardless of who's playing well. He's just going to keep riding Christian McCaffrey. He can't help it.
Yeah. So keep him.
I don't
from
see him
himself.
making any changes to that. I really don't
either. As long as Bobby Turner's on the staff, I think Kyle Shanahan is
going to be afraid. And then 2 years ago, he wanted to make sure the Niners and Shanahan wanted to give McCaffrey a big showing, like, hey, we're going to give you the load. We're going to show that you're going to prove yourself to everybody because everyone doubted you. This season, this next one, I feel like he's going to do the same thing. Like, hey, everyone thinks you're done. Let's show them that you're not. Well, it's kind of like, hey, look, you got other backs. You got to find ways to utilize them.
I would love to see Kyle be the play caller that everybody says that he is, and try to do something other than ride the coattails of players to their death on the field. The Deebos, the Christian McCaffreys, the George Kittles. Like, I want to.
It's better that Deebo's not going to be be that he doesn't have that to rely on. And how many times did we see where it was like, oh, Deebo's a huge part of our offensive game plan going into this week, and then he gets hurt.
And he's out. Yes.
Yeah, like, oh, then everything gets all screwed up. So it's probably a better thing that he's going to be gone.
It is.
One of two things. One, you could very well see Christian McCaffrey become the new Deebo Samuel, and every single offensive game plan is centered towards him. And if he's out and injured during a game, it all goes to hell like it used to with Deebo. I also think that without Deebo Samuel there, and let's assume that CMC takes Deebo Samuel's role on certain plays, I think there is maybe a possibility that we actually finally do see Jordan Mason or Garendo or Christian McCaffrey on the field together. I think one thing that maybe holds Kyle Shanahan back from doing that more consistently is because Mason, although improved last year, isn't really that great of a pass catcher, whereas Garendo, he is. Flip that, though. Mason is a heck of a pass blocker now. Garendo can't pass block for his life. So, there is some if I do this, you have to be more consistent, which maybe that leads to a new running back being drafted and then being more consistent. I'm a big Kyle Monangai fan, albeit Kyle Shanahan may be like, look, I'm going to go Patrick Taylor Jr. again, and we'll see what happens.
I'll tell you what. When we talk, I'm switching gears a little bit. When we talk about the defensive line real quick, I think they're going to draft heavy defensive line, probably offensive line, and some other positions as well. But I think there's always that prospect out there that a guy like Joey Bosa is going to get cut. And he may go to the Niners and say, hey, I'll sign a 1-year deal, a 2-year deal. And that's kind of like, I feel like, and I could be wrong, but it feels like that's their wild card. Like, hey, if he becomes free, you better have a
rotation. Then you better have a rotation of edge rushers.
But that'd be better to have Bosa, Leonard Floyd, and Bosa. Have both the Bosa brothers with Leonard Floyd. That's a better rotation than.
I would keep Yetur Gross-Matos then. I don't know if he's still on the team. Yeah, but I would bring him back as well. I would have
he's signed for his next season. But he may get cut too, depending on who they draft and who they sign.
They were also saying that they were looking at putting Floyd on the block to move him. So
yeah,
I mean, there's a lot.
That's a good point. What was up with that, Sterling? They were talking about they were possibly looking at trading Leonard Floyd. I thought that was interesting that was even being put out there.
Who said that?
That's the question. Somebody.
I mean, look, Bosa, I know at the end of last year, Nick Bosa advocated to bring back the exact same group. I'm sure that also includes signing or drafting somebody as well.
He better step his ass up then.
I am of the opinion that Joey Bosa is going to be a San Francisco 49er this offseason. They tried to trade for him last year and things didn't, come together with the Chargers.
Cheryl Bosa followed me on freaking TikTok.
That's it. That was the indication that Joey's coming here. Here,
Yes.
I'm sharing the screen too. So, according to BetUS, who's a sponsor of the Dre Area Sports Show,
all right.
The Lions are the favorites to get Joey Bosa. I don't know why they would be the favorites over the Niners.
Aiden Hutchinson's hurt. They don't have the other guy. Myles Garrett's probably going to Philadelphia. I guess that can make some sense.
Can you imagine if they got him? Damn it.
If you believe Tim Kawakami, he's like, Joey wants to go to San Francisco. So he may want to stay in LA too, depending on the asking price and the money. But everything I'm reading, which could be wrong when it's all said and done and free agency's over with, all the indications I'm getting is Joey Bosa wants to be a San Francisco 49er. I think, the Niners may view this as, let's insulate our team. Let's use our 10 draft picks. Let's sign some depth. Let's not get too crazy. But I'm of the opinion that they're going to do that, but they also want to be big name hunters, not big price hunters. And I think Joey Bosa is a big name out there. There's injuries there, but that's why even
Khalil Mack sounds like someone they could target too.
Right. Both those guys make a lot of sense for them. San Francisco tried to get Khalil Mack in 2018. He goes to the Bears, and that's history. But there's a reason as to why Leonard Floyd is still here. And I don't think they'll trade him, although they could. If you get Joey Bosa, you have to have Leonard Floyd, who does not miss games. And if that's your number 3 edge rusher, you can keep Nick and Joey relatively fresh throughout the entirety of the year. You draft a guy, you have Yetur Gross-Matos, you hopefully get the entire interior defensive line repackaged and regrouped together and improved.
All of a sudden you have a really good deep defensive line. I don't think you have
to add Garrett or Crosby. I think it's just go get Joey Bosa, let him and Nick have chemistry and go nuts, and then let's figure everything else out.
So do you go, if that's the case and they do that, do you go interior pass rusher at 11? And just completely go. I was going to say the word again, but I'm not going to.
Walter Nolan is there.
You gotta go balls deep, brother.
You gotta go balls deep.
Hey, we got plenty of holes. You gotta go balls deep in somebody.
You know what? That's what we'll call the show. We'll call it Balls Deep.
Balls.
49ers Balls Deep.
That would be a great name for a podcast.
It would be Balls Deep.
Deep in the 49ers. Let's get it.
Balls Deep. 49ers Roundtable.
Well, we'd get a lot of
3
attention.
dudes. Balls Deep. Okay,
maybe we'll get a
that's like an
by
OnlyFans show. Like
I know,
man that gets some subscribers.
Okay, but look, Walter Nolan is there. He's probably going to be. He could be available at number 11. Yeah. He's a a defensive lineman interior that would serve a lot of needs. I mean, there's Shamir Stewart who would look like a monster. Shamar. That's like when Sterling calls D'Amico Ryans Demeco.
Dude, it's the same
you
thing.
do it all the time, and every time you say it, I'm like D'Amico. I'm watching your video. I'm like D'Amico. But look, there's a lot of talented guys that are coming out of this draft, and I think they're going to go deep when it comes to their defense. I mean, they still have holes at safety. Here we go again.
Holes deep. Here we go.
They still have holes on their defense, obviously at linebacker. I'll touch on this really quick. I don't think that anyone is going to give Dre Greenlaw, a lot of money to be their lead linebacker. I don't. Because, I mean, look, is the guy talented? Fuck yeah, he's talented. He's coming off a horrible injury in which last season, if he would have came back on the Rams game and played the rest of the season, that's a little different. And let's say he played at a fairly high level, then you could say, hey, this guy's back. But he didn't, though. And the one team that I could see, giving him money would be the Texans, because who's there? Azeez Al-Shaair, and he's played with him before. So now you're pairing them back together again. And with Demeco, as you put, D'Amico Ryans. You know what I mean? So, like, there's a familiarity there. So that could be a destination that he would go to. There's the Commanders because of Adam Peters, but I don't think he goes there. Is he the kind of guy you're going to bring in and be like, okay, he's going to be the leader of our defense?
Are going to give him a price. They're going to give him a price, but they're not. They're going to be set on that price. I don't think
You
the Niners.
hope
I mean, they're
so.
going to be like, what's that?
Robert Saleh's been calling Dre
Yeah.
every single day, apparently, being like, "Hey, come back! I want to have you back." And it's like, cool. Why? Like, give him $6 million and say, "Here's some incentives," and say, "If you don't want it, I'm sorry, brother." I also would not be shocked to watch the Dallas Cowboys sign Dre Greenlaw.
Ugh.
I wouldn't be
Hey,
shocked if a team like the Kansas City Chiefs went out and signed a guy like Dre Greenlaw too, just to stick it to the 49ers. I don't know. I'm just putting things out there.
I mean, it's possible. I hope he comes back. I hope they bring him back, but I think that that's something that is more on the back burner right now because they have bigger fish to fry, which is obviously the draft, Brock Purdy, the Deebo Samuel trade. So I think that is sort of like on the back burner. Like, yeah, we're going to get to that, but we got these to deal with first. But to me, you can't go in the season with just Fred Warner and
D. Winters.
You can't.
Well, you also have Curtis Robinson coming back from the ACL, who looked pretty good in
Tatum
preseason
Bethune.
before he got hurt. Bethune, second year from Florida State this year.
Yeah.
They cut Demetrius Flanagan Falls, which is a good move. He was really bad last year. Was their worst
He was
defender
pretty bad
on the entire team.
It was horrible.
But going back to Dre's question about the draft, and even Aaron's question too, like, let's say they sign Joey Bosa in free agency. And whether Greenlaw's back or not, I don't think it changes much at 11. But one of you mentioned earlier, you have to get the best player. What if the best player is not a defensive tackle? What if it's not an edge rusher? We've seen at the combine, Mike Green has massive red flags with assaults on his record, which there's probably more to that than we actually understand, but that's still a massive red flag for you.
Yeah.
Walter Nolan didn't work out and is relatively undersized. Even Mason Graham, he weighed in under 300 pounds as a defensive tackle. That's terrifying. Like, he's a great player and he plays great, but it's like, do I want to spend the 11th or maybe number 6 overall pick if they can trade up for an under 300-pound defensive tackle? I wouldn't do that. I don't know if there's any validity to this, but at 11, there's going to be 2 guys on that board. It's going to be Will Johnson from Michigan, cornerback, and it's going to be Tyler Warren, tight end from Penn State. And I don't think you should do either one of those players. I wouldn't pick either one of them at 11. I would rather trade back, get more picks, maybe give yourself some second round maneuverability, go get 2 guys in second round and see what you can do there. But I really would not be shocked to watch San Francisco, 1, draft Tyler Warren, or 2, Saleh's back. He may say, hey, I need the most athletic freak you can provide me. And Shamar Stewart is that guy from Texas A&M. I wouldn't take him either. I think he's relatively raw and green behind the ears. But if San Francisco is like, look, we're at 11, we can't trade back, what do we do? I feel like Tyler Warren, and maybe Kyle being like, I'm going to fight you in the parking lot and say, if you don't give me him, I'm done. I need to give myself Tyler Warren on this team now.
Drafting another tight end. Yes, we need more depth at tight end. Absolutely. Saubert was just like a dude who was just running routes. So it was like, hey, happy to be here.
Wasn't even blocking.
Happy to be here. You know what I mean? Like, hey, thanks for showing up every day. But you're talking about drafting Tyler Warren when you already have George Kittle, and you're talking about extending George Kittle so that he ends his career with the Niners. I don't see wasting a first-round pick on a tight end. Now, obviously, you can have multiple tight ends on the field. That is something we saw with Gronkowski and the other guy who's in jail now. Well, he's dead now. But Aaron Hernandez. But to me, the Niners have to focus on the line, dude. In the trenches, it's got to be defensive line or offensive line. It has to be one of those two. And based on who's going to be there at number 11, most likely, I think it's going to be a defensive lineman or an edge rusher.
Maybe
Shamir Stewart. Shamir Stewart, it would not surprise me if they took him. But then if they took him, that means that if Joey Bosa gets cut, they're not going to sign him. They're like, well, we already got an edge rusher and Leonard Floyd.
I don't think Joey Bosa's signing has any implications on what they do in the draft whatsoever. I really don't.
That's true. I mean, if they're thinking about that, then they're tripping. What about Joey Bosa?
We'll see, guys. It's free agency. Free agency to me is going to be really intriguing. Do the Niners do nothing and stay pat and just
No, they're going to do something. They're going to.
Or
They
are the
have
Niners
to.
going to make a couple of mid-level plays on like a safety,
yes,
a center, and maybe a wide receiver? Could Devontae Adams be a 49er next year on a 1-year deal?
No,
I wouldn't be against it. He would automatically
I wouldn't be against it.
He would
automatic.
What's that?
It's the price tag. Like, what does he
price
want?
Tag. They big names, not big prices.
Well,
right.
And he's probably going to wait to see where Aaron Rodgers goes. If Aaron Rodgers goes to the Raiders, then it's kind of like, well, maybe I'll go there.
That's so stupid.
That's Aaron Rodgers to the Giants and Malik Neighbors and Devontae Adams. Dude, G-men are back, baby.
They're back. No, I mean, look, the Jets brought him in. They were like, we're back, Super Bowl contenders. They obviously were not. It was really bad.
Want to kind of close it out with a couple quick talking points on coaching staff. We lost. Oh my God, Brian Griese is no longer the quarterback coach. That will now be Mick Lombardi as the quarterback coach. And Clay Kubiak, after all that silliness a couple weeks ago with the Niners not doing their judiciary responsibility of going out and interviewing the proper candidates, they finally named him their official OC. Chris Forrester named assistant head coach. Kind of sad to see Griese go, but I think he did. It was more of a favor for Kyle Shanahan than anything, because he had the experience. He played a long time. Wasn't ever a top flight quarterback, but it'd be interesting to see what Brock Purdy took from him and what he'll be going forward without having a guy like Brian Griese in the building.
Do we make much of Griese leaving? Like, yes, having a consistent presence for Brock Purdy on the sidelines where Kyle can't walk over and Griese can walk him through things. Mick was there last year, Mick Lombardi. I just think where the Niners are now, like, not to say that quarterback coaches aren't valuable, but like, you're paying Brock Purdy big money. Like, you shouldn't have to have a top flight quarterback coach to make you great. And maybe that's me being foolish, but you really can't get any worse than Rich Scangarello, who was here with Garoppolo in 2 different stints. He was terrible. He was horrible. Yeah, he was. And just couldn't scout well, didn't know his quarterbacks well. Like, just a bad quarterback coach in Kentucky. Got fired really quickly there too for the right reasons. Do you guys have confidence in Mick Lombardi at all? Like, do we even need to have confidence in Mick Lombardi?
I think that Purdy's at a point now where he's pretty comfortable with his abilities, and I think where Griese really helped out was that he had that NFL experience, so that anytime he ran into situations where he was getting frustrated or was dealing with adversity, he can turn to him and get advice from a veteran quarterback who's been there. And that's why I think it's very important to bring in a veteran quarterback like a Joe Flacco or somebody to be that backup quarterback to Brock Purdy, so he has someone to lean on and be like, "Hey, man."
A whole other thing that we could have talked about today.
Yeah. I know I'm going in the wrong direction, but
no, it's fine.
I don't think Mick Lombardi is going to be like a game changer. I think for the most part, it's going to be business as usual in Santa Clara. I don't see if this was Brock's second year, I think it may have an effect on him, but at this point, I think he's locked in and he knows the playbook, he knows his team, and who knows who was going to have at receiver. So
paying a quarterback almost $60 million, you better be damn sure you know what you're doing at your job. If you still need training wheels and you have $60 million a year coming your way, then there's some serious problems. I think Brock's going to be okay. I think Brock last year, he regressed. A lot of that had to do with him trying to play hero ball. I think Brock Purdy, if he comes back more down to earth next year with, McCaffrey being back, having Kittle, healthy team around him, I think we see the 2023 Brock Purdy. So no, I don't think he needs a top flight quarterback coach. This isn't Alex Smith in the beginning of his career. This is a What is he? Is he a 3-year starter now or a 4-year starter, Brock Purdy? I forget.
2.5. 2.5.
Yeah,
going into
2.5.
his fourth year.
2.5.
Yeah, I mean, Montana was behind DeBerg for a little bit in his career, and then eventually they took the training wheels off and got rid of Steve DeBerg, and Joe Montana was the quarterback. So eventually you got to, take off the floaties and go swim in the deep end. And I think Purdy will be fine.
Well,
And Purdy is 25. Oh, I thought you said Purdy making 25 this year. Nah, that's not going to happen.
that'd be great. Can you imagine? He's like, I only need 25 million. We're fine.
$25 per year. That'd be great.
Just 25.
I mean, like drafting Will Johnson, a corner out of Michigan. I just,
there's the injury concerns.
But I don't see that being
out this year that has the injury, the knee injury or the leg
Abdul
injury.
Carter. He has the stress
Carter,
fracture in his foot. Like, oh my God, what?
Carter has the foot. Josh Simmons has a patellar. Will Campbell from Michigan also has, I think it was a hip injury last year. Maybe I'm wrong, but Simmons has one. Carter has a small one. And
Take
then
them all
Will
off your
Campbell
draft
from
board.
Michigan.
Take them all off your draft board if you're the 49ers.
Or excuse me, Will Johnson. Sorry, Will Johnson.
No.
I mean, Mike Green looked amazing, and then you look at his police record, and you're like, that's not. And then it reminds you of Reuben Foster. Remember, we were like, oh, what a steal, and that was a disaster.
Yeah, the guy, he tackles like a bullet and never wraps up, and he gets hurt constantly. Yeah,
he was constantly hurt. It was just
I used to call him Mr. Blue Tent because he was always in the blue tent his first year.
And then when he gets in the blue tent, he fights team doctors while he's in there too. And it's like, oh my God.
Hey, keep your girlfriend out of the hotel. Okay, coach, I got you. Hey, babe, I know I got like that whole thing. Like what? That was crazy.
I think the Niners take the best defensive tackle or edge rusher that's available. I think that's what they're going to look at. Like which two of those positions, like which two players they have, higher ranked. Whoever is the highest ranked player at those two positions, they're going to take one of those two players.
Well,
at number 11.
This is that this edge rushing group, while yes, has a lot of talent to it, there's 3 clear guys and then a bunch of guys you like but aren't in love with. It's Abdul Carter, Mike Green, and then Pierce from Tennessee.
Yeah,
like
James Pierce.
I am of the belief that before Mike Green's red flags came to be known, I was like, get an edge rusher and then get your D tackle in the second and third round because it's so deep this year. Which maybe San Francisco views this the 11th overall pick maybe as kind of a luxury again, where it's like, look, we don't feel the pressure to get the edge rusher here or the D tackle here. Let's take the best player available, which may make some people angry, but you could be talking about Jahdae Barron from Texas, a cornerback. You're talking about Will Johnson, Tyler Warren. Maybe they get nuts and they go, I don't know, whoever, tackle like Armin Membu from Missouri could make some sense if they want to go offensive line in the first round. Maybe they get lucky and somebody falls to them. Kelvin Banks from Texas. I just hope whoever they take does not have pre-existing injuries. That is my biggest fear. High upside, but patellar injury. And you're like, for the love of God, don't do that.
Let me ask you guys this. If Ashton Genty is available at number 11, would you take him?
No, I trade back and take the Broncos pick.
I would not take him either.
Because look, the Cowboys pick right behind us. It's a deep running back class. Maybe teams will wait. But if a team wants to get Genty ahead of the Cowboys, I am open for business if the guy wants not there. You give me pick 20, give me pick 15, whoever else is out there. You want that pick 11 to get in front of Dallas? By all means, I will screw Dallas over. I'll take a first-round pick this year, pick 20, pick 18, whatever you want, and I'll take your third-round pick. I'll take next year's second overall pick or second-round pick 2, and we'll make a deal right there and then.
I don't see them moving up in the draft. I don't see them making a trade and move up because I don't think they have enough capital to even make that move.
I can see them moving back, though, at 11.
Yeah.
Especially if they address some things in free agency and things don't become as serious of a need as we think they are at 11.
But
and I would totally be for it, too, because like you keep saying, recalibration, rebooting, everything. What's the best way to do that? It's always accumulating as much ammunition.
They need the most help in the defensive line and offensive line.
Oh, 100%.
I said receiver earlier because they got to solidify that. but the core is your defensive line, offensive line.
George Kittle said it. He had an interview and he said that the Eagles proved if you have to have a really good and offensive defensive line. He said, and it doesn't matter what else you have if you have those two things. So Kyle, if you're listening, John, if you're listening, listen to Kittle because he knows what he's talking about.
Well, even John Lynch told Matt Mayoko on the Niners Talk podcast, like, I watched the Super Bowl. The one thing that stood out was Philadelphia's defensive line. So
yeah,
I think they know. Like, they have to figure out the trenches. And again, free agency starts in about 12-ish days or so. Like, we will see what happens.
Yep.
But pick 11 will be interesting. Like, if you can trade back, gain some more, early day 2, late day 2 picks, maybe Kyle can then say, well, I can get my receiver. Then you talk about insulating that room too, and go and getting a guard and a tackle and a couple edge rushers and a defense. Like, you already have 10 picks. You can really, really help your team out by trading back at 11, even if it is to the Colts, who, let's say Tyler Warren's still there. They want to get ahead of Dallas. They want to get ahead of the Falcons. They want a tight end. You want Tyler Warren, let's go back just 4 spots, similar to how they utilized the Greenlaw pick, which didn't work out in retrospect, but it gave them the ammunition to go get Brandon Aiyuk later in that draft too. So a lot can happen.
Hey guys, it's been great. I had fun. We could go forever talking 49ers. I feel like we should reconvene if free agency becomes a spend fest. And of course, as we got to go balls deep in free agency, guys, and in the draft.
I will be balls deep in Japan during free agency.
Oh, yeah, right. He's going to be in Japan.
I keep forgetting that.
I feel wearing one of those.
So I'm thinking we call a podcast.
A gi and a samurai sword.
Balls deep 49ers coverage, or instead of locked on 49ers, it would be no, I can't. Never mind. Anyways, everybody, thank you so much. 49ers. There was a lot of you in the X on the side of X that were in the chat tonight.
Oh yeah,
for all of you who have been in here, have been commenting. A lot of you were commenting. Thank you so much, you guys. I had a total blast doing this. Like I said, we can go forever, but hopefully we'll see each other soon with all the stuff happening in the off season.
Yeah.
But until next time, everyone, peace. Everybody, take care and go Niners.
Go Niners.